Hi, welcome to Biva with Cheva. Grab yourself a Biva while we get down to the details today. For our second episode, we're keeping on point and diving into Russian education and why the country might be turning back the clock to the Soviet era. Let's start with the Soviet model. Education back then was highly centralized. Every subject, every textbook, every exam was standardized across the country. Students followed strict curricula. The system focused on science, engineering, and ideological training, teaching the Soviet worldview alongside academics. Every course had a fixed syllabus, so students had no choice in subjects. By the end of the 10-year school system, students were tested on core subjects: Russian language and literature, mathematics, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, physics and chemistry, history, and a foreign language, usually English or German. But education didn't stop there. The curriculum also included natural history and geography, military and physical training, design, drawing, and singing. Higher education wasn't all that different. Once students completed the 10-year school system, they could move on to higher education, but choices were structured and competitive. Universities and institutes were specialized. You didn't just choose science or arts broadly. You picked a field like engineering, physics, medicine, etc. Admission was based on exam results, school performance, and sometimes political reliability. Some of the most prestigious universities included Moscow State University, Leningrad State University, and specialized institutes like the Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology or the Moscow State Institute of International Relations for Diplomacy and Foreign Languages. Because the system was centralized, universities followed strict curricula, and there was little flexibility. Courses, research topics, and even thesis subjects were heavily guided. Contrast this to the current American colleges, and you can see how stark this difference is. Now then, on to our next chapter, the Bologna system. Fast forward to the 21st century. Russia moved away from the Soviet system and adopted the Bologna model, a European framework aimed at standardizing higher education. The Bologna process started in 1999 with the Bologna Declaration, signed by 29 European countries. Its goal? To create a standardized, compatible higher education system across Europe. Before Bologna, each country had its own degrees, credit systems, and grading scales. Moving between countries for study or work was often complicated. Bologna aimed to make degrees more comparable, improve mobility, and encourage international collaboration. The main features of Bologna are 3-cycle degrees: bachelor, undergraduate, master, graduate, and doctorate, PhD. European Credit Transfer System, ECTS, a standard way to measure student workload. Recognition of degrees internationally, so students can study or work abroad more easily. That way, your degree that you obtained from a university in one country would be valid in a different country should you choose to pursue a master's degree or seek employment there. Russia officially joined the Bologna process in 2003, adopting the 2-tier system, a 4-year bachelor's degree followed by a 2-year master's degree. This was a huge change from the Soviet model where students completed a single longer program, usually 5 to 6 years, called the specialist degree. The Bologna system split it into 2 parts, emphasizing mobility and international recognition. Now students earn a 4-year bachelor's degree followed by a 2-year master's, quite similar to most European countries. This made Russian degrees easier to compare internationally, allowed students to study abroad, and encourage mobility. But recent announcements show Russia may be moving away from Bologna. The government wants a nationally controlled system. Reports suggest a reintroduction of the specialist degree, a longer single program combining bachelor and master studies, much like the Soviet model. Why? The idea is to strengthen national curricula, regain control over universities, and reduce Western influence. This would impact everything: course length, teaching methods, and even international recognition of degrees. So students could spend 6 years in one program instead of 6 in 2 separate ones. But there's more to it than you think. Consider this. Previously, you could do your bachelor in your hometown and then get a master's at a more prestigious university with a better research program. Now, you get a long 6-year degree that ties you to one place with limited flexibility and opportunities. There are obviously other issues such as career limitations, fewer possible connections, potential regional inequalities, higher dropout risks, and so on. Talking of opportunities, let's consider another perspective. Russia has long been a magnet for international students. Why? First, the cost. Studying in Russia can be surprisingly affordable. We're talking around 5,000 euros per year, compared to tens of thousands in Western Europe or North America. Add on relatively low living costs and specialized programs in medicine, engineering, or Russian language studies, and you can see the appeal. But the real draw wasn't just price. It was the Bologna system. A Russian bachelor's or master's degree could be recognized across Europe. That meant students from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East could do a cheap degree in Russia and then move on to a Western university for a PhD or land a job in another country. Russia became in many ways a stepping stone. Now imagine this changes. If Russia abandons Bologna, those degrees may no longer be automatically recognized abroad. Russia's international student body is estimated to be at around 8%. So not that huge of a loss financially, but in terms of long-term perspectives, this is something to ponder on. So let's step back. What are the pros and cons of Russia moving away from the Bologna model? The downsides are big. First, recognition. Degrees might no longer be valid abroad, limiting international job prospects and academic mobility. Second, flexibility. Under Bologna, students could change fields, transfer universities, or pursue a master's elsewhere. A 6-year program ties you down. Third, innovation. Bologna encourages student exchanges, shared standards, and collaborative research across Europe, leaving it risks isolating Russian universities. And finally, inequality. Wealthier students can still go abroad for recognized degrees, but ordinary students may be stuck in a system that limits their options. The pros? First, stability. A single long 5 or 6 year program can mean deeper immersion and a steady focus. Second, professional training. The Soviet-style model was famous for producing specialists, engineers, doctors, teachers, who were trained for very specific careers. Some argue this makes graduates more job-ready in Russia's domestic market. Third, national control. Abandoning Bologna is seen by some as reclaiming sovereignty from Western frameworks. It allows Russia to set its own educational standards without outside influence. The good news, however, current students and graduates will still have their degrees recognized. But those entering after the reforms could face barriers if they want to work or study abroad. While a mass exodus of students leaving isn't exactly expected, uncertainty for the future of education in Russia remains. What this means for students, universities, and the international community remains to be seen. If you found this breakdown interesting, hit that subscribe button and join me on Beva with Cheva as we explore more surprising stories about culture, history, and society.